the baker who gives away bread daily. In a small, sun-drenched town nestled between rolling hills and winding riverbanks, there lived a baker named Samuel. His bakery, a modest brick building adorned with a painted wooden sign that read, "Daily Loaf," was a fixture on the main street. Each morning, before the sun had fully crested the horizon and while the dew still clung to the grass, Samuel would unlock his doors, tie on his flour-dusted apron, and begin his day's work. The scent of freshly baked bread would soon waft through the sleepy streets, mingling with the cool morning air and coaxing townsfolk from their homes. Samuel's hands, strong yet gentle, moved with practiced ease, kneading dough, shaping loaves, and tending to his ovens. He had learned the art of baking from his father, who had learned it from his own father, the legacy of the daily loaf stretching back generations. But Samuel's bakery was different from others in one remarkable way. Every day, as the first batch of bread emerged golden and steaming from the ovens, Samuel would set aside a portion of his loaves. He would wrap them in simple brown paper, tie them with string, and place them in a wicker basket by the door. Above the basket, a sign hung, handwritten in Samuel's careful script, "Take what you need. No payment required." To passing strangers, the sign might have seemed out of place in a world so often ruled by transactions and ledgers. But to the people of the town, it was a simple truth. Samuel gave away bread, every day, to anyone who needed it, no questions asked. It began years ago, when Samuel was a young man just coming into his own as a baker. His father had fallen ill, and the family's resources had been stretched thin. Samuel remembered the kindness of a neighbor, Mrs. Donnelly, who would leave a loaf of bread on their doorstep every week, wrapped in a faded kitchen towel. The bread was never the fanciest, but it was always warm and nourishing, a small act of generosity that made the world seem less daunting. As Samuel grew older and assumed the mantle of the bakery, he carried that memory with him. He resolved that no one in his town should ever go hungry if he could help it. He believed that bread, the most basic sustenance, was a right, not a privilege. Word of Samuel's generosity spread quietly but steadily. At first, only a few people took from the basket: the elderly man who lived alone at the end of the lane, the widow with 3 children, the young couple whose business had faltered. Some came in the early hours, hoping to avoid the gaze of others. Some came openly, their gratitude written in the lines of their faces. Samuel never pried into their stories. He greeted everyone with the same gentle smile, as if their visit was the most natural thing in the world. He insisted that the bread was simply extra, that he hated to see good food go to waste. But those who received it knew better. They understood that Samuel's gift was not just bread, but dignity and hope. As the years passed, the town changed. New families arrived, old ones moved away, and the world beyond grew busier and more complicated. There were times when Samuel's business struggled, when rising costs and slow weeks left him worrying late into the night. But he never faltered in his commitment. Even when the shelves were not as full as he wished, the basket by the door was always there. Sometimes, people tried to repay Samuel in their own ways. The local carpenter mended his creaking floorboards one winter. The seamstress patched his aprons and curtains. Children would leave wildflowers on the windowsill, and teenagers, too proud to accept free bread, would sweep the stoop or help with deliveries. Samuel accepted these gestures with humility, recognizing them as part of the same circle of kindness. One autumn, a terrible storm swept through the town. The riverbanks overflowed, and many homes were damaged. The bakery's roof leaked, and Samuel lost much of his flour and yeast. For the first time in years, he wondered if he could continue. But when the storm passed, something remarkable happened. The townspeople rallied around Samuel as he had so often done for them. They brought what ingredients they could spare: flour, sugar, eggs, and helped him repair the bakery. For days, the daily loaf became a hub of bustling activity, laughter, and shared labor. Children carried buckets of water, neighbors painted the walls, and even strangers from nearby towns lent a hand. When the ovens finally roared back to life, Samuel found that he had more helpers than ever before. Together, they baked bread not only for themselves but for anyone in need, near or far. Samuel realized then that his small act of giving had sown seeds of generosity that now bloomed across the whole community. The bread he had shared had become something greater, a symbol of unity, resilience, and compassion. As time went on, the daily basket by the door remained, but it was no longer filled by Samuel alone. Others contributed loaves, buns, and pastries, each wrapped with care. The basket had become a communal offering, a testament to the belief that when one person gives, it inspires others to do the same. Visitors to the town would often pause at the bakery, marveling at the simple sign above the basket. Some would ask Samuel why he continued to give away bread, especially when times were hard. He would smile and say, "Because kindness is not diminished by sharing. It grows, like dough rising in the warmth." In the evenings, after the last loaves had been sold or given away, Samuel would sit by the window and watch the sun set over the rooftops. He found peace in knowing that, for at least another day, he had done his part to make the world a little softer, a little warmer. As years slipped by, generations came and went. Children who once took bread from the basket grew up and taught their own children to give. The daily loaf stood as a quiet beacon, a place where anyone could find not just food, but a reminder of the good that lives in ordinary hearts. Samuel never sought recognition, but his story spread far beyond the town. People wrote letters, telling of how the tale of the giving baker had inspired them to acts of kindness in their own communities. Some started their own baskets, offering food, clothing, or simply a listening ear to those in need. One day, a young journalist, curious about the enduring legend of the daily loaf, visited the bakery. She asked Samuel what advice he would give to those who wanted to make a difference. Samuel thought for a moment, then replied, "Don't wait for perfect circumstances or grand gestures. Start with what you have. A loaf of bread, a kind word, a helping hand. The world is changed by small acts, multiplied by many hearts. Give what you can, and trust that it matters." As the journalist left, she turned to see Samuel handing a loaf of bread to a little girl whose family had fallen on hard times. The girl's eyes shone with gratitude, and Samuel's gentle smile was unchanged by the passing years. The lesson of the baker who gave away bread daily is not one of wealth or power, but of quiet, persistent generosity. In a world that often measures worth in terms of possessions or accolades, Samuel's life is a reminder that true richness is found in what we give, not what we keep. His story teaches us that every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to ripple outward, touching lives in ways we may never fully see. It reminds us that community is built not on transactions, but on trust and compassion. Most of all, it reminds us that hope can rise from the simplest of gifts. A loaf of bread, freely given, can feed not only the body, but the soul. And in sharing what we have, we find ourselves nourished in return. So, in the quiet town where the daily loaf still stands, the scent of bread continues to drift through the air each morning. The basket by the door remains, a humble invitation to take and to give. And the legacy of the baker who gave away bread daily lives on, in every act of kindness, in every heart inspired to share. For in the end, the most lasting change begins with a single, simple act, a loaf of bread, a gesture of goodwill, and the unshakable belief that we all have something to give. And as the sun rises each day, the world is made a little brighter by those who choose to give, quietly and generously, expecting nothing in return, simply because it is the right thing to do.